Welcome back to another part in the Nintendo 64's 64 Best Games. Today's episode is a special one for me as it's going to take a look at the 8 best 3D platformers on the platform, one of my favorite genres. I was never fortunate enough to own a Nintendo 64, but that didn't stop me from borrowing it from friends, family, and renting it for weeks at a time to get my game time in. The 3D platformers was a new genre introduced thanks to the Nintendo 64's power to process 3D graphics, and to this day is the platform people think of when talking about 3D platformers. In fact, this is probably one of the hardest lists in the series to rank because every game is just so damn good. So now we look to add another 8 titles to the list as we march forward towards a list totaling 64 of the best Nintendo 64 games. Here are the top 8 3D platforming games for the platform. We previously covered Goemon's Great Adventure on our top adventure list, but 1 year prior there was another entry in the series which played as a platformer called Mystical Ninja starring Goemon. The game offered a quirky and fun universe as players would fight against the Peach Mountain shoguns from turning Japan into a westernized theater. Of all things to fight for, that's a strange one, but an honorable cause nevertheless. The gameplay was as tight as a Mario or Zelda game. There was enough variety in the game to keep things fresh and new power-ups to change up the gameplay as well. To top it all off, it's very Japanese, for better or for worse. Some people will love the comedy, others won't care much for it. Imagine my surprise after I played Bomberman Hero to discover that all the other Bomberman games are nothing like this title. That's right, Bomberman Hero was my entry to the franchise, and I love the game so much I tried out the rest of the franchise trying to find similar gameplay, only to repeatedly find, well, what Bomberman is actually known for, a top-down dropping bomb kind of game. The mechanics were similar to the traditional Bomberman games where you drop a bomb and can kick it, but this time you had a full open world to play around in, and different power-ups. There were 5 worlds in total to traverse, and each stage had ad hoc bombs to collect. Players that got them all and achieved perfect scores in all stages unlocked a 6th secret world. With the revival of Bomberman on the Switch recently, I can only hope we'll see another 3D entry to the series soon.
Here we go.
The first rare game on this list, Donkey Kong 64. You just know there's going to be a lot more rare in this episode. Where to even start with this game? It gave us the famous Donkey Rap, new Kongs to play with, voice-over cutscenes, catchy music, and coconut guns! It had everything a Donkey Kong and 3D platforming fan could want. The only thing I'll knock it for is its mandatory requirement of beating the original Donkey Kong arcade mode twice! I rage quit on this so many times I can vividly remember clenching my controller and throwing it at the wall with all my strength, which, isn't much, but anyways. I was saving this story for my personal documentary before keeping it classy, but here we are. Consider it a preview. Continuing down the line of rare hits, we have Banjo Tooie, the sequel to the hit Banjo Kazooie. The game launched towards the end of the N64's life, so it had some of the best visuals from the N64 catalog. It also brought back everything gamers loved about the first game. Tons of things to collect in each stage, new power-ups that unlock new areas and past levels, and more of the same humor to go along with it. Another franchise that made the leap to 3D during this era was Rayman with Rayman 2: The Great Escape. This game would go on to be ported on several other platforms including the PS2 and even the Nintendo 3DS. The story of Rayman games aren't usually all that important or logical, but rather just set you up to move forward, collect lums, and regain your powers. Speaking of powers, Rayman has a ton of cool ones in this game, including a shooting ability, his helicopter jump, and a grapple beam sort of thing, and of course a lot more. Kicking off our final three, we have the legendary Conkers Bad Fur Day, which is known not only for its great gameplay, but its excessive vulgarity, its high price amongst collectors, and a giant singing piece of poop.
Me, 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 me. I am the great mighty Pooh, and I'm going to throw my shit at you. A huge supply of tish comes from my chocolate starfish. How about some scat, you little twat?
This was another gem released by Rare, and also the last game they would release on the Nintendo 64. The game offered the usual 3D platforming flair of, well, platforming, puzzles, and collectibles, but there was also a multiplayer mode. The multiplayer mode had 7 different modes, which had quite a bit of depth to each one. One mode was an all-out third-person shooter that came with a generous amount of blood. This game just had so much to unpack, and it really stood out for its time.
There you go. She's all yours.
Thanks very much. I'm going in. Wish me luck, fella.
At this point, you can probably guess the number 1 spot, but a solid number 2 on this list is of course Banjo Kazooie, another rare gem. What's truly unique about Banjo Kazooie is how a new IP was able to dominate the 3D platforming genre on the Nintendo 64. While many companies were changing their IPs to fit characters into 3D platformers, Rare made history with the iconic Banjo Kazooie. It was a huge 3D world with a ton to collect, power-ups to unlock, and witty humor to go with it. The main reason this holds a higher spot than its sequel is simply because of the impact it had at its time. It made people rethink what a 3D platformer could be. The game's spirit would live on to be reborn in the spiritual successor Yooka-Laylee, but reception to that game was quite lukewarm in comparison. Alternatively, a Banjo Kazooie remake was made for the Xbox 360, which again didn't do so well. The best way to relive this series and Rare's other 3D platformers is through Xbox's exclusive Rare Replay collection. Securing the number 1 spot on the list with relative ease is Super Mario 64, the game that defined the 3D genre. It was the launch title for the platform and the first to take Mario into an entirely new direction, which personally blew this young Hey Jay's mind. The idea of being able to explore Peach's castle and finding all sorts of secret-like hidden levels, secret switches, and secret stars, this game just had so much to offer. Additionally, players could feel like their actions had an impact on the game. Defeating King Bob-omb in Bob-omb Battlefield would stop the cannons from firing. Lifting the sunken ship in Dire Dire Docks would unlock new parts of the level, and so on. Speaking of Dire Dire Docks, the soundtrack to that level and this game were on a whole other level. Just listen to this. This was the game that had me fully addicted to the Nintendo 64. I could play, replay, and replay the hell out of this game and not get tired of it. There was just so much to see and discover. It was simply put, magical. A feeling that is very hard to grasp in the modern age of gaming where a genre can't get that same leap forward like the first time seeing a game going from 2D to 3D. Or really just the first time experiencing a 3D world like Super Mario 64. And that completes another set of top 8 games in my list of 64 best titles for the Nintendo 64. Were there any 3D platforming games I missed that would be on your top 8 list? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the best Nintendo 64 titles. Get in or get out.